a very good morning to you, and welcome to Newsline live from the Newsfirst studios in Dawson Street in Colombo. Before we start, let me wish you, on behalf of the network, a very happy Deepavali. And joining me on this wonderful, quiet morning is Bandula Jayasekara, our journalist and former diplomat. Good morning, Bandula.
Good morning, Faraz.
It took me 11 minutes to get here.
Yeah, so you should have
traffic.
More holidays.
We should have more holidays. And also, very good morning to you, Mr. Dasri, Govind Dasri, the eminent legal personality. How are you?
Thank you, and I'm glad to be back with you.
Thank you very much. You're very kind. But tell me, the resignation of Sri Lanka's Minister in charge of law and order and the police, Mr. Tilak Marapana. First time in the history of post-independent Sri Lanka, or?
Well, a very rare occurrence, but strange. The issue is avant-garde. I mean, hardly a national issue, but avant-garde may claim many more victims in this witch hunt that is going against them. Whether who's right or who's wrong is not important, but what is relevant here is, I find that Mr. Marapana, a very dignified, very respected Attorney General, a very moderate and a balanced man, went berserk in making a statement in favor of avant-garde, which I think he should never have done, because he is counsel for avant-garde, and there would also always be repercussions if you do make a statement on behalf of your client in the capacity of a cabinet minister. Now, but what is remarkable is how quickly he took action to negative himself by resigning, which is rarely a feature that we see in Sri Lankan politics. Sri Lankan politics, we see, in fact, people who have lost their electorates have rejected now today are cabinet ministers.
Indeed, but I think that we mustn't appear to be petty, we as in the media, and we must acknowledge that this is a good decision for Mr. Marapana to resign. But equally, I as a journalist would like to say that it was a wholly necessary course of action. Do you agree?
And also, even though Gomin said that he resigned under pressure, if there wasn't any pressure, he wouldn't have resigned.
Yes, but nevertheless, we must acknowledge that this man has resigned.
Yeah, definitely. And also, I want to add that once we had this incident where Gamini Jayasuriya resigned a post in the Lanka court, this is after that. You recall, during J.R. Javadana's time. So after that, we haven't had any.
I think MDH Jayasuriya, another very honourable man, he resigned. I think it's the honourable people who do resign, and Gamini Tilak Marapana will fall into that classification. And I think we should appreciate and admire the fact, but he did for him to resign. That also, I mean, look at it in a balanced way. That is how I would look at the issue.
But I would like to go into my skeptical mode, because that is the only place that I can draw some comfort. And my skepticism tells me that Mr. Marapana resigned at the instructions of his Prime Minister, or at the request of his Prime Minister, who must have assured him, go to court, defend your client, presumably earn your money along the way, but once that's all done and dusted, you can come back and have your position. Is that a good line? If it's true, is it a good line?
It's speculative, but let me say that it is quite the proper line in the sense that he erred, because as a cabinet minister he should never have gone and made that kind of statement in favor of his client in holding such a position. And he did the right thing, the most honourable thing. Before it could escalate, it could snowball, he resigned. But thereafter, he's a private citizen, in the sense a member of parliament can certainly appear for a client. Unlike cabinet ministers, today we have even people who are in the cabinet appearing as counsel in court, which is very wrong, because you should not, or I would say should not, as a member of the executive, participate in an arena where judicial power is being exercised. It's totally against the balance, against the...
And they walk into courts with all this security and all these people, and they intimidate.
Security is one thing.
So how, is it all right for an MP without a ministerial portfolio to practice in court?
Yes, that has been the practice even in the British system. You, as an MP, you hold no position, but the moment you hold official position as a minister or a junior minister, you cease to be counsel because you intimidate, you have control over the judicial officers, and therefore, in the best of practices, you should not participate at council, but that is being flouted today. And to that extent, Mr. Marapana is now entitled legitimately to appear for any party he so desires. But whether he will be reinstalled in the cabinet, well, that's the thing for the future.
But in the press conference, Faraz, he said that he's not going to appear. That's why I saw a journalist questioning him.
Oh, I see. He's not going to appear. That's his private business.
But he also got an endorsement by the former president.
Oh, did he?
He said that it was a very honourable act. That is good, but also you must remember that the former president did not speak at the time he should have spoken at the parliament, at the debate in which Sri Lanka was being critically attacked in Geneva. I think he should have spoken at that on that occasion, but instead of doing that, he...
sorry, I'm sticking to this matter of avant-garde, because I'd like to ask you, we had a situation where having instituted a matter against avant-garde and a police investigation being carried out and so on, the Attorney General actually said that there was no case and even returned the passport of one of the key personnel at avant-garde. And now there seems to be all umming and ahhing, and now we're told that the President and the Prime Minister will make a decision, take a decision on avant-garde in the coming week. Isn't it all sending mixed signals to the Republic?
Sure, it's topsy-turvy because, on one hand, the Attorney General takes up a position, and I remember in a program you restore certain material that came from the Attorney General's department which gave a contrary opinion. Now, I would tend to think that what is correct is any official of the Aegis department should bow and acknowledge that the role of the Attorney General. He should not give conflicting opinions because the Attorney General is the ruling authority. But nevertheless, now we have not only Attorney General taking decisions, but it's being taken up by the President and the Prime Minister. Now, they are not entitled to take those decisions if there is a strict separation of powers in our Constitution.
Well, what I want to ask is, we are told, or it is sort of common knowledge, received wisdom even, that 3 Deputy Solicitor Generals had virtually said the same thing, that there was a case for prosecution. How possible is it that the Attorney General has a different view? Surely they are all 4 of them lawyers looking at it, so they're all going by the same available evidence. So then how come one... And the Attorney General's made the different decision. Is it not, how does it work? Doesn't it call them in and say, well, why?
Well, in the hierarchical structure of the Attorney General's department, Attorney General sits on top, and remember, he's a protected animal under the Constitution. Right. Now, his decision will be superior to those of the Deputy Solicitor Generals, but normally in a case, it is possible that people will take different views. But what is strange is such views should be collated, considered by the Attorney General and the officers, but they should not put into the public realm those varying opinions, because that would cause great embarrassment to the Attorney General. And that is why during the time of people like Mr. Tilak Marapana, this kind of thing never happened. He was a very dignified, very respected Attorney General. So even today we must consider that he is an intellectual. Just like Mr. Vijayadasa Rajapaksa holds himself as the President's counsel, these are intellectuals in the cabinet who are making statements that are against the grain of collective responsibility. So it really confuses the public. It's not a good message that is going out, because you must know who the captain is, you must know teamwork. Those are all necessary. You can't run solo, you can't run a dummy run and solo. Now this is what is exactly happening. Shouldn't
some others also take the cue from the leadership provided by Tilak Marapana, who is some sort of hero really for having resigned, and we must recognize that and give him his dues. But shouldn't some others also Shouldn't heads roll, Mr. Dasari?
Very much so, but heads won't roll. Heads are, they don't like to get beheaded at all. They want to be constant heads. I mean, this is the problem. It is, we blame politicians, but we must also blame the administrators. They are sycophants. They hang on, bowing to acknowledging the leadership without advising the ministers properly. That is why we find that the first we see allegations now being made against the last government's top bureaucrats, because did they act correctly, did they act properly, or did they carry out political instructions? Because I think this decision of Mr. Tilak Mara should be lauded, because for the first time we see somebody taking a decision on his own, and the Prime Minister has accepted his resignation.
Personally, Mr. Marapana's decision is excellent news, because all over the world, we, through our various missions and other organizations, we are always proud of the type of democracy and balance that we practice in Sri Lanka. And Mr. Marapana's decision to resign can only do us good in terms of that.
It's coming to the old practices where I think people like Gamini Jayasuriya, MGH Jayawardena, they resigned when, I mean, take it, I mean, when Mrs. Bandaranayake lost that bill, she straight away resigned. She didn't put it to another vote. She resigned. The government went for elections and they lost the elections. Those are laudable things. Those are institutions.
But we have
democracy.
people who have committed, I mean, accused of murder, drugs, all that. What about them? I mean, will they? You're saying these old school people. That's what these three names you mentioned. There's plenty, in the parliament.
But they are respectable people. They act with responsibility. But they are, aren't we also to be blamed for it? We vote these people over and over again back in the parliament.
I don't agree always when you say masses are asses, that's wrong. But this is what, what young Buddhika Patrana said, he who wants to bring this bill, they should not be called honorable. Yes. That's very welcoming. He's going to bring this because he said it's not an honorary job. It's a very interesting point.
Let's come back. Let's take a short break. Do stay tuned. We'll be back with even more startling analysis. Welcome back to Newsline, where we are joined by Bandula Jayasekara and the eminent legal personality, Mr. Gomin Dasari. I want to ask you, Mr. Dasari, under the agreement reached between Rakna Raksha and Avantgarde Maritime Services, they agreed to do a set of deliverables together. And one such thing was to maintain a database, an inventory of all the weapons that were being used in this operation. It was like a rent-a-car operation. It was just that here they were renting the weapons and the personnel. So they were renting, for want of another word, mercenaries. However, a thought has occurred to me that almost next door to our country is another country that is in the throes of a big issue. They have found a big cache of weapons, which for them is the biggest in their history. I'm talking of none other than the Maldives. We have a vice president there who is now under arrest, and apparently for his involvement in an assassination attempt on the president of that country. How sure can it be when Maldives imports so many things through us, their water, their drinks, everything else, it passes through Sri Lanka? How sure can we be that these weapons that were found in the Maldives could not have come from Sri Lanka? Isn't it entirely possible that these weapons may well have found its way to the Maldives?
Yes, that's a possibility, but gun smuggling is also worldwide, internationally it's very well known. And remember, this is not the first time that Sri Lanka has been involved in the politics of Maldives. If you remember a few years ago, there was a coup to overthrow the government where Sri Lankans were very much involved, and they said it was the LTTE. Now, we are not only exporting arms, but we are also, seems to be exporting people to Maldives to create mayhem. So I think we have to be very careful in these things. There must be, Maldivian authorities also must exercise due control, because if they do exercise due control, then their shows will be safe. Now, in this, we cannot point fingers without having necessary evidence, but certainly what you say is a possibility.
Women, viewer wants to ask you, Raisi, he said, if we cannot believe in the central bank, the justice minister, the police minister and public administration, whom are we to believe?
That's a very good question. I too will fall into that category. Today, can you believe anybody? I mean, you can probably believe yourself, and you can believe some of the people who are close to you. But authority, whether it is politicians, whether it's public authority, I mean, they say different things at different times. I can understand politicians doing it, but public servants also. The way they are so servile, the way they bow and acknowledge anything that comes from politicians. I think this country has no future if this is going to be the order of the day.
And my friend Farah Shaukat, you're also in the news. I mean, by,
Always on the news,
Yeah, because by the Vijay Dasarajapaksa, you're very much in the news.
Ah, yes, that's a matter that I should be looking at very closely together with my legal team.
So you're going to send a letter of demand asking for $1 billion?
Well, we are looking at all the options. And I'm certainly not mentally retarded, so I will make but a bullet hasn't stopped us, so I don't think the little pronouncement is going to stop us, is it? What I wanted to say is this, Mr. Dasari. When this vessel, avantgarde, the vessel avantgarde, when it was caught, when it was detected in just outside Sri Lanka's territorial waters, but in its what it's called the contiguous waters, the Navy stopped them and so on, and there was an investigation. But then all of a sudden we are told that this matter has been referred to, at that time when they detected this vessel, it wasn't an FCID case file. Or all of a sudden we are told that this doesn't have to go to the police per se, but that the FCID will look into it. What's going on? Who do you think is the most likely person to have given these instructions?
Well, it has to come from above the police and above the FCID. It must be somebody in a higher echelon. But undoubtedly...
Who do you think?
Well, it could come from the president, it could come from the prime minister, or it could come from the Ministry of Defense.
Now we're talking, you see, because the president's... The persona that he puts out is that he's the chairman and he's got his managing director, the prime minister. So he lets the prime minister get on with it. The president has got a portfolio, which is, I believe, environment, and he gets on with that and the wider running of the country. But the prime minister, we must settle for the prime minister, because if you recall, a few weeks ago in the Bimal Weerawansa passport affair, it was the Prime Minister, we are told, who had to intervene.
It's quite possible, but I don't know whether we can call it a happy alliance, with a happy marriage, because if at all it seems to be that with the local government elections coming forth, they have clearly said that there'll be two teams. There'll be one led by Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe, another led by President Sirisena. Now, if the main two parties that form the government, which has come into existence to ensure Yahapalana, proper governance, then if they are in a conflict situation, if they challenge each other, isn't it going to be very difficult in a cabinet where you have ministers who represent the two parties, especially wouldn't they be clashing each other? I mean, this is just like the situation that happened in England, where socialist and the conservatives form the government. In end of the day, historically, it is the weaker party that gets wiped out, and that is what happened to the social
who's the
democrats.
weaker party here?
To me on paper it looks like the president, because for two reasons. Why? Because the president has elected as cabinet ministers those who have been defeated by the electorate. Two, the president owes greatly to the UNP for electing him, because it's the UNP votes that helped him. But it's too early. This too early days.
UNP couldn't have done it without the president, because they couldn't field a candidate.
That is exactly.
So they have to be grateful to the president.
Of course,
they failed twice. First they brought Fonseca, and then they.
I'm just going back to when you referred to Mr. Vijaydas Rajapaksa.
Very famous, even more famous.
What I want to make clear is, Bandula, that I won't arouse my legal team and take the matter to court if the minister is man enough to acknowledge he's made a mistake and resign. Then we won't need to go to court.
So you are going to throw a challenge?
Well, it is.
Ask him to resign.
It's clearer than him waving that letter like this,
And after that, invite him to the program.
Oh, he's welcome anytime. We practice democracy here on this channel, and as you know, we are the opposition. Having said that, Mr. Dasari, what does it say about our society generally when you have a private company, a commercial establishment, is able to change a cabinet minister? The Ceylon today says, their headline is, Avantgarde sends Marapana home.
Very accurate, very accurate. It shows to what extent this corrosive conduct of the private sector is. But that is very strange, isn't it? When you look at the Bribery Act, when you look at the fundamental rights, the private sector is very secure. You cannot bring an action in a fundamental right. You can't exercise a fundamental right against the private sector. You can't bring a bribery charge. The private sector is very, very, I would say, sheltered. But which is not so to the public sector. I think we can't have this kind of discrimination, because very often, as in this particular case, one could say, is the private sector engineering these things from behind? Whether even in the case of bribery and corruption, whether it is violation of fundamental rights, to what extent is the private sector responsible? If that is so, shouldn't all be treated equally in this kind of society where under Section 12(1) equality is being practiced? So what I find is something that we should all look at is the private sector overprotected?
Some people will say that all this happened under the previous government. But I want to make this point, by the way, about these votes. The UNP are at fault here, Mr. Wickremesinghe and his party, because they couldn't excite enough voters to vote them into power on a majority basis. They fell short, and they had to go basically with the begging bowl towards the President's house and say, please save us. That's what happened.
Not once, twice over, and repeatedly, successively. Once it was Fonseca, next time it was Sirisena. It shows that Wickremesinghe doesn't have the confidence in asserting himself. He doesn't. So he follows somebody, gets that person appointed, and then takes over power.
Well,
is that the game that he's playing? Because in this,
you must those two people within.
You see, what you have to understand is UNP is a very strong political party, the oldest, and probably just as much as the UPFA is concerned, it has numbers. But it has never been able to assert itself, because it's disgraceful when a political party successively, that is over a period of 12 years, they have not been able to put forward a candidate of theirs and still remain as one of the strongest opposition parties. They should have the courage, they should have the guts to put if this would never have happened. If the UNP put a candidate and that candidate won, there wouldn't have been this unholy alliance, the kind of unhappy shotgun marriage that we are seeing today.
Well, we are running out of time, but talking about the private sector, the private sector is called upon to do many things, including the payment of one-off special taxes for some people, bigger players in the private sector. But it is the private sector that is continuing to highlight this issue, for example, on avant-garde. It's this private sector company.
And also paying the salaries of government servants, the private sector.
Can you say it's the private sector or is it the media in the private sector? I think media in the private sector is in the forefront. But whether
we are, indeed we are.
You are, not only you, but I would say give that credit to the entire private press and television media.
Not everybody is fearless, Gomina. I am talking through my...
But let me say, to this credit of this government, people are more fearless today than they were. They
I'm talking of
yes,
but they're not. That's true. But I don't.
It's only a matter of it's only a matter of degrees.
Yes, I don't mean to be ungrateful, but I must say this: that whilst there is that freedom and there are no white vans, there are economic white vans around, and there are other ways in which the media is being intimidated. Whether we will fall for it, well, they've got something else coming if they think that. On that note, time to say thank you very much for having been on on our network, Mr. Dasari.
Thank you for inviting me.
It's
It was enjoyable.
a pleasure having you.
Thank you again.
And Bandana, it's a great pleasure to have you this morning.
Thank you, brothers.
And I know that you're trying to scoot off for a week next week, but it's time that we told the viewers that, because the last time you were off, we got a call the very next day asking if you'd been changed because you are so outspoken. We had to then clarify that you were just because you were old and you wanted a day off. So we've said that. So viewers, Bandana Jasek is taking a week off next week.
Not entirely.
Not entirely, but he in there. And perhaps we should end with this little thought for the day. It is in your moments of decision that your destiny is shaped. Happy Deepavali, have a great day and take care.